All right. So there's sort of the class, yeah. Okay. So we have with us two friends of mine, former students. Anthony is only of like this week a former student. He just graduated. Actually, graduation is coming up, I think, right? And
This Saturday.
Jordy now lives back in New York. So I'm gonna let you two talk about who you are and stuff, and then we can have some questions and conversation. Yes? Okay. So who wants to start? I don't care who wants to start.
I'll go. So my name is Jordy Francisco. I am a former Canisius College student. I graduated back in 2019. I am now back home in New York, and I currently working in the finance field.
Yeah. What's up? I'm Anthony. I'm just about to graduate this Saturday. And yeah, I'm about to start working as a patient care technician in a hospital pretty soon. Stuff like that. It's awesome.
And how did you guys get to know me?
I actually met Richard when I became a Spanish minor back when I was so in college. I studied criminal justice and sociology, but I also decided to study Spanish at first because I thought it was easy, because that's my first language. But yeah, it was not as easy as I thought.
Do you use Spanish still every day?
I do. I am one of two people at my job who speak Spanish, and we get a lot of Spanish clients. So I'm kind of the second go-to. So yeah, every day. And also, my mom only speaks Spanish, so it's part of my daily life.
And then
And
Richard, I first met Richard informally over email when I asked him about any Spanish things at Canisius. He probably got annoyed with me. I sent him too many. And then I became a Spanish minor because why not? And then I just started having classes with him. And then I like Richard. He's a good teacher. He's fun, stuff like that.
you don't have to
Um,
flatter me anymore. I can't give you a grade, so.
and yeah, no, I use Spanish every day. Like my mom's from Dominican. I have to communicate with her. Um, Improves my Spanish. Definitely like when I go out to volunteer at like different medical places, they need translators too. So then sometimes I translate at these volunteer places. So yeah, Spanish is important. Different language is important.
What do you feel about like being young gay men and Latin men? Like, how do you feel those things intersect? And Anthony, you should probably, are you still with your, sorry, I don't want to make assumptions here, but are you still with your your Belgian boyfriend?
I am. I am. He's coming up this Friday, actually. I'm really excited.
What was the question
Oh,
again?
either we yeah, Jordy. About being gay and Latino, like how those things operate together.
I mean, I think for me in my daily personal life, they like it's not much of an issue. I think in the Latin community in general, it's rooted in religion. I think at first being gay, now it's more acceptable, but back, before when I was coming out, it felt a little harder because, with religion, it's hard to be accepted in the Latin community. Um, but as time has progressed, I think we've made a lot of strides in that area. But at first, it can be difficult because a lot of people, think being gay is a sin and in the Latin community. Um, just because, the church and the Bible and all these things tell you one thing. Um, so I think at first that was very difficult. But now, in my daily life, I think being gay and Latin is more acceptable. So I think, yeah, it's more acceptable in my opinion.
Do you feel it's different between Buffalo and New York?
Um, I would say Actually, well, I mean, in Buffalo, I didn't experience any, any like homophobia or anything like that. I think it's definitely different because in New York City, like, New York City is a more open place. New York City is where a lot of people come to be, freer, and you'll find a mix of different types of people. So I think in Buffalo, I think Buffalo is more centered. It's more closed off, in my opinion, than New York City itself, just because of the populations that we have here. Here we have all types of people in Buffalo, in my opinion, is more of a predominantly white state and compared to New York City.
What about you, Anthony?
No, literally everything he said. I actually just came out to my mom just about a year ago, basically, because as like Jordy said, like it's viewed as a sin. So basically like all my life I've grown up viewing it as like, oh no, I have to get a girlfriend, I have to have children like with my girlfriend. My mom wants to be a grandma, and then she goes to church basically every Sunday. Same thing. So I just grew up learning that it was a sin and I can't do that. Of course that wasn't healthy for me, and so I just like grew up trying to figure out ways to, what do you call it, overcome my gayness and stuff like that because of my heritage. And then I realized, I just realized like, no, like I don't want to do that. So I just like followed my heart, did that. And then like with like at least like within my experience, like with my mom and my Spanish family, that like spent like family is always like very important. So over time, like she came to accept it in ways. So that's what I gotta say about that.
And you grew up in Buffalo, right, Anthony?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, that's enough of me talking to them. You guys, any questions for Anthony and Jordy?
If it's not too private, of course, I would like to ask you what was like your mother's initial reaction, because you said that with time she kind of got used to the idea, but like I'm curious if it was just like a conversation going on, or was she like, oh,
So I actually came out around Easter time. It was like a dinner, and so like I asked my mom like, "Hey, can I bring someone to dinner?" And then she was like, "Oh, who is it?" And I was like, "Oh, my partner." And then my mom was like, "Oh, who is she? I want to know." And then that's when I came out. Actually, I said, "Oh, it's actually he." Um, I
You
just
brought
dropped
up
I
the
just
whole
dropped
thing.
the
You
ball.
surprised her.
I literally just dropped the ball in front of her that day, and then she was like, "Oh no." I was like, "Oh, okay." It's and so that was around Easter time. So then when my semester ended around summertime, I went back and then started talking to her more about this and said like, "Hey, remember when I talked about like my partner?" And she was like, "Yeah." And then I just asked her like, why can't I be this way? Like, why can't I be gay? And then she would always resort to like, oh, it's a sin. God doesn't like that. You're going to go to hell. And then not gonna lie, it got very frustrating. I started yelling at times. I like stormed out of the house because I just felt I wasn't accepted by like my own mother, like the person like I grew up my entire life, and it really hurt. Like I had to start to yell, and I just couldn't be who I was around her. So my sister actually, she's also from Dominican Republic. Like she was like my big supporter during that time when I first came out, because I would always go to her house and just talk to her about things. And then she would kind of be like the messenger between us. And then she got pretty annoyed. She's like, just talk to one another. I'm I'm annoyed trying to like communicate between the both of you. But like she really was the big bridge between us, trying to get my mom to understand me and trying to get me to calm down and not yell when I had conversations about that with her. And then like, you know, over time, like I started to get more calm, trying to just talk to her through things about like why I feel this way, why like I can't change. And then and then I feel like she didn't say this to me specifically, but she said, but I don't know. I feel like she just started to realize that, like, this is who I am, and I can't really change who I am. And she does still view it as a sin per se. Even though she doesn't explicitly say it, but she's come around to be more understanding, and that, like, also that I'm her son, and like she still very much loves me, and she made that very clear. So that's also helped a ton.
Has your partner come to dinner yet?
My, wait, let me see. Oh, has he come to dinner? He came one time to my house, and then my mom was praying for like 30 minutes. And then this Friday when he's coming, he's actually gonna stay with us at my mom's place and myself. So
You'll have to tell me
Progress.
how that goes.
yeah, I'll update you.
What about you, Jordy, with your family?
I actually came out to my mother the summer as summer was ending before my senior year of college, so back in 2019. Literally we were on vacation in Florida, and I was heading straight from there to Buffalo. So I think it was like the night before, I literally just went to her room and I just told her, that I needed to speak to her. Um, so and then I told her I was gay. This was like at 12 a.m. Like she was about to go to bed. I was like, okay, if it's not now, it won't happen for a very long time. So it's time. I needed to pull the trigger. I was dating someone at the time, and I was just exhausted of like trying to keep it, you know, hidden. Like only my sisters knew at this point in life, besides my friends. And obviously, when I went to Buffalo, like I was myself. But here in New York, only my sisters knew. So anyway, I told her, that I was gay in her room before the night before I left. She cried. She was very scared. I think there's this misconception, and I don't know if it's just in the Latin community or just in general, that like only gay people get like HIV and like get all these health issues. But that was basically one of her first comments to me. Was like, she wanted me to be safe and she wanted me to take care of myself. And I also told her, like, straight people also get HIV, mom. But okay, I get your point. Um, and then we cried, but in general, she was accepting. I think in her heart, she knew like all along, but she was pretty accepting of it. She was just scared, for me, one, because, the health stuff, but two, as we know, gay people are just not very accepted in this world and in this country. So she was just more scared for my safety than anything else. But at the end of the day, we gotta live. Yeah, that's how I came out.
Other
And the rest of my
questions?
family was pretty accepting, by the way.
Other questions?
I have a similar question. After coming out, did any of your Latin friends or relatives, like cousins, turn your back on you after coming out?
Did you hear?
For me, yes. For me, no. My friends have always been pretty accepting. And my family in general, I'm very close to my immediate family, like cousins, aunts and stuff. We're not as close. So no, but we still speak on, every often. But no one turned their back on me. Thankfully, I'm very lucky that I never had an issue with my family thus far about me being gay. So I've been very fortunate.
My friends are very accepting. Like the first people I told were my friends, so I had no issues with them. And with like my Spanish family, they were also very accepting. Like all my cousins that I told that I was close to, they were like, "Oh, okay, you do you, have fun." I was like, "Thank you."
Other questions?
I also wanted to ask you about the language because you said, if I understood correctly, that Spanish is your fourth language. Did you say that?
They're first.
Yes, Spanish is my first language. Yeah.
Okay.
I basically so I was born in the US and then I moved back home to Dominican Republic as a baby. Because my mom was still like trying to make her life here in the US. So we moved back to the Dominican Republic with her family, my sisters and I. I'm the youngest of three. So we moved back to the Dominican Republic. So the first language that I knew was Spanish. And then I moved back to the US when I was 7.
Okay, I just misheard you, and I thought you said that it's your fourth language, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. So I wanted to ask.
No,
Wait,
only 2
but-
languages in this range, Spanish and English.
So have either of you experienced racism either in Buffalo or in New York? And is that based on perceptions of blackness or perceptions of Latino?
Mm, I've never experienced like direct racism. I think you always get like um those looks of like people don't understand like why you're in the space that that you're in. I'm kind of, since I work in banking, I'm pretty much around like a white space in my opinion. So I think it's always a lot of like people don't understand why you are where you are. In my experience, like I've never experienced anyone, being overtly racist, to me. Do I get looks? I'm sure. I probably more because I'm gay than Latino or both. But sometimes depending on where I am, my mannerisms may be a little more, you know, gay than straight. So I think you always get those looks, but I've never had anyone like call me the F word or be overtly racist to me. Thank God. But I think people never. I do think people never understand why I'm in the spaces that I am though.
Was that worse at Canisius? Because it's a very white space.
Um, I was very fortunate at Canisius to find myself, around a very diverse group of people. I feel like from the Latin community because I was in a program called HELP where it was a program for minorities. So I found my community there, but I was also able to find white people that I could relate to, and they were pretty accepting. I think sometimes for some of them it was kind of cool to see someone from a different culture, come into their life as well.
What about you, Anthony?
Like the same thing with me. Most of my friends are from the HOP, ULSC, LaSalle, Alana, which are basically like the students of color there at Canisius. So my friends mainly revolved around like those group, but like of course like my white friends as well. Like they were actually very accepting at Canisius. They wanted to learn about what foods I ate. Some of my friends also learned some Spanish words along the way, and they still do. And they ask me like, Anthony, how do you say this? How do you say this? So at least like for me too, it's been like pretty good, pretty well. And there is like at Canisius at least there is a sense of division between that group and like I don't know, I guess like the business athletic groups because they are mainly white, and I felt like I'd never personally talked to them or any of my friends at least. So I can't say from personal experience how they are when they um come to treat other people of color, but actually the other day I was at a party. I was at a party um for like the end of the semester for finals and stuff like that. And there was this group of athletic people that were actually saying the N-word just casually. And it was pretty disturbing to hear that.
Wow.
Uh I don't understand like
Yeah.
why they felt the need to do that, and I'm glad I wasn't there, or else I would have been very very mad, very disturbed as well, frustrated. But when I heard it, I was very frustrated. So I can't say like racism is not there at Canisius because it clearly is there, hidden stuff like that. So in terms of Canisius, like that's what I experienced. Outside of Canisius, there were times like in the United States when I went down to one time when I went down to Florida for a Disney park adventure. I went with some of my friends and my boyfriend Yenta, and Yenta and I were holding hands. This is not racism, this is homophobia actually. So we were holding hands, we were going to a store, and this old lady, I don't know who she was. I was so mad at her. She just like comes up to us, she looks at us, nasty look. She's like looks at her hands, walks between us. I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, who are you? And then she just like walked away. I'm like, are you serious? Like, she didn't have to say anything for us to clearly understand, like, her intents, her thoughts on, gay people, and that like homophobia still exists in this country. Even though like it's clearly gotten better, like there are still like moments like those that make me feel like shelled out from society, and like I just like want to be who I am. I just like want to love the person that I'm with right now with like all my heart. I don't want to be afraid to show my love with him, and I want to hold hands with him in public when I can, and be near with him. And the moments like those just like really make me so frustrated and sad too when those things happen. Of course, like when I read or like watch other videos of same things happening to other gay people as well. Um, so yeah, I had some experiences like that, and I had like many others too. So, but no, those are like two big things that hit me.
Do you think part of it was also being an interracial couple, or?
I don't know. I don't know. Probably, honestly. Um, I just know at that moment I was just very frustrated, and I didn't want to think about it like after that. But sometimes like I talk to like some of my friends about it, and um I have no clue. It just happened on that day, and I was just like so frustrated, shocked, and sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, do you guys think of yourself as American? And if so, do you like you both nationalities? Do you think they're like different identities of yours, or are they like one identity?
Hmm. I I think of myself as, when people ask me what I am, my answer is Dominican. I'm very proud to be Dominican. Yes, I was born in the US, but I'm very much in my culture, from my family, to the type of music that I listen to, I'm very immersed myself in being Dominican, being, Latino. Yes, I can identify as American, but I primarily identify as Dominican. Um, that's really where I feel like I'm rooted from. That's where I relate the most to, in my opinion. Yeah, so even when people in white spaces ask me what I am, I'm Dominican.
What does that mean for you though? Like, is it language? Is it food? Like, what does Dominican mean for you?
It's all encompassing. So from language, to the type of community, that I am around, usually, to the music that I listen to the food that I eat. I gravitate towards Hispanic food, rice and beans, chicken, or that type of mixture. All of me gravitates towards that, and so it's all encompassing to me.
Anthony, what about you?
I'm literally the same. I say I'm Dominican. Like I relate more to like my Dominican culture. Primarily since like I live with my mom. I have all my life, so like I grew up with like the language. I grew up like learning the slang. I love teaching other people about Dominican slang. It's so fun. Same thing with like the food. I love rice and beans. I can eat that every day. I don't care what other people say. They're like, oh, rice and beans every day. I'm like, it's good. Listen, I say plátanos like plantains. I love plantains. Bacalao, like type of fish. Oh, it's so good. Everything like the salami, the cheese. Oh, I gotta eat later. It's really good. But yeah, no, I'm like 100%. I identify like being more related to my Dominican side. The music as well. Like I love listening to like El Alfa, like artists like that, and I just like go about my day. So you know.
'Cause Anthony, in Buffalo, there's how big is the Dominican population? Because it's
population. It's not really that big compared to like the Puerto Rican population. Since like at least like my from my experience, whenever I go to the west side for church or I'm just there at the tops, because the tops in the west side, they're like the main place to get the Spanish food. Like other tops or like Walmarts don't really have the stuff we're looking for. But everyone that like we mainly talk to is mainly from the Puerto Rican heritage, Puerto Rico. There are some Dominicans. I can't
Maybe
quite
not
remember,
many.
like very, very few, but
you know, the Puerto Ricans dominate the population there.
In Buffalo, yes. But
In Buffalo, yeah. But you,
Yeah.
Jordy, where you live, is it primarily Dominican?
say that again.
Where you live, is it primarily Dominican though?
Yes. Actually, yeah, in my neighborhood, it's a mix, but it's primarily Dominicans. Usually, you will find that like in New York, like New York City, like people will kind of like form like their own communities and like in the blocks that they live is what they call it here. Uh, so yeah, my neighborhood is primarily Dominican. My building is primarily Dominican. But there is a good mix of like Puerto Ricans and Colombian and all these types of Hispanics and Latinos. But yeah, it's primarily Dominican where I am.
Other questions?
So I have a couple.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what you guys talked about, like minutes ago. Because you said your friends were, like accepting and so on, but, did you ever like meet, for example, a Latino, very straight guy? Like, maybe let's not say homophobic, but as we talked about a movie, before, like the one having like very masculine views and so on, and if you've ever encountered that kind of person, how was it?
You know, the stereotypical macho that you get with, right? That's what
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
asking? Yeah, the stereotypical macho Latino, like, what kind of encounters you may have had with that?
Mm, I mean, I'm sure I've met a couple. I've never been like no one has ever been directly homophobic to me. Like I'm sure if people comment on it, it's always done like behind my back. Have I seen the stereotypical macho Latino? Yes, but they've never. I try not to interact too much with people who I feel like would be judgmental. I just, I kind of mind my business for lack of a better word. But I've never had someone be like overly homophobic to me. Do they comment on it? Most likely, but I've never had that encounter where someone has called me like, the F word or anything of that nature where I felt like I wasn't safe. I've been very fortunate to find myself in places where I feel accepted or some people just can't tell depending on where I am. So I've never had like a bad encounter.
Anthony?
yeah, no, I'm thinking, yeah, and as far as I can remember, besides Florida, like everyone's been really accepting, and like Jordan said something that like also hits with me in terms of staying away from people that I think may be judgmental like that. I am also very cautious of that when like, I talk to new people and like who I actually like want to tell that I'm gay and like because I really don't want to deal with like, like, oh, you're gay, blah blah blah. Like it's like too childish. I have no energy for that. I'm tired every day. I really I don't have time for that. So that also hit home with me. Like I'm also very cautious for like the people that I talk to and like who I want to open up to. But as far as like, I can remember as well, like I've been also very fortunate to be in environments, communities that are, just accepting. And they have like no reason to judge except like and just like, show love instead. So that's also like, been a big reason like why I've been able to like come out, last year since with all the support I've been given. So
Anthony, I wonder if you could talk just briefly about when we had those sessions with the kids in Mexico and the queer kid that suddenly found himself in a safe space through that. Do you want to?
Right. Oh my God. Yeah. What was his name?
I don't remember.
I have him on Insta. What was his? I can't remember, but when I talked to a student from Mexico, from Guadalajara, right? If I remember. Yeah. So he was from Guadalajara, and at first, like, he was very, very much quiet. Like, he didn't really like talk to me. I was trying to like ask him like simple questions like what's his name, where is he from. Very much like quiet when I first talked to him for like the first 5-10 minutes, and then after those 10 minutes I just like opened up to him. I was like, oh, with like my family I have this and this. I'm currently dating my boyfriend right now. And then after that, like, he completely like opened up to me. He was like, oh, you have a boyfriend? I also have a boyfriend. And I was like, oh, show me pictures. And he was like, oh, you got to show me pictures too. And then after that, like, that's when like the conversation started to like pick up. Like, we got like each other's Instagrams. He started being like more energetic with me, much more loudly, making jokes. So definitely, like, after, I said something that probably hit something home with him that he probably couldn't talk to much people about, because when I was talking with him, he said he only came out to like one of his family relatives, or two of them, and then some of his friends as well. And I remember, like, I was like in that similar situation where I only came out to my friends, and then eventually my sister, and then my mom. So it like I was just like I always like think about that moment, how empowering it is to have someone that you can relate to, and realizing that, like, you're basically like the same person. And then you can like actually talk to someone about things you don't have to hide in otherwise like other communities that you do have to hide. So yeah.
So just to explain to you, so in my Spanish classes, we do Zoom breakout rooms, so that the students in Mexico can practice English, and then we switch, and then my students can practice Spanish. So they're talking to each other across both languages. And this poor kid was like in with Anthony, and he just wasn't talking at all. And then I joined the conversation too, and started talking about my husband and this, and he completely transformed. It was just interesting how closeted this kid was in his university setting in Guadalajara, which is it's a very gay friendly city. It's a huge city in Mexico, but he didn't feel safe there. But suddenly within this little Zoom room with Anthony and myself, like, he became a different person, really. The funny thing was that he met his boyfriend at church, which I thought was like a fantastic. Do you remember that, Anthony?
Yep.
And I'm gonna just tell a little story about Jordy too for just 1 second. But Jordy went to Cuba with me. Do you remember this, Jordy? So Jordy went on a study abroad to Cuba with me, and he was the only boy in the group. And the rule with Canisius was that the genders had to sleep separately. Like, okay. And that assumes that, like, if I had 6 lesbians and Jordy, like, but I still had to keep the genders separate, because that's the thing, right? It's a Catholic institution, so whatever. And so I spent all this extra money to give Jordy his own room. Where do you think he spent all his time? He never was in his own room. I'm like, I could have just, but of course, also caveat, Jordy did not tell me he was gay at this point, so I didn't know.
It's maybe you should have been able to tell.
Wow.
I'm just kidding.
I know, but like, I don't want to make assumptions, right?
You thought it, see? But
I
yeah,
know.
I mean, I also lived across the apartment in Cuba was also across the street, very separated from everyone else. I was like, yeah, no, I'm not staying here. And it was also
No,
very
he
like
felt
eerie.
lonely.
Yes.
It
very
just, so now I have a form. I'm like, okay, how do you identify on the LGBTQIA plus spectrum? So that, do I have to actually get you a separate room, or can we like? But anyway, other questions for Anthony and Jordy?
Maybe do
Yeah.
do you have a favorite part of the Dominican culture? Like, what's your favorite?
Say that again.
What's your favorite part about Dominican culture? Yeah.
The food and the music. Mostly the food, but the food and the music. There's just there's something just very rich about the flavors that we use. So yeah, the food is my number one. I'm also just a big foodie in general.
Do you cook?
I do cook, not very many things, but I do make my favorite dish, my rice, beans, and chicken. I make that very often. But yes, I cook a couple of different things.
What about for you,
I,
I,
Anthony?
I love the food. I love because I live in a small, like a pretty small house, and I love just coming in and it's just super super hot because like we're using like the oven and we're using like three different pots. I love smelling it, and like even when we open the windows, it's still super hot. Food is my big thing. I love it so much. Same thing with like Jordy. I'm a foodie. I love to eat.
That's a good segue for Monday's class, which is all about food.
Like special, particular?
Could you hear the question?
Oh
no.
no, I didn't hear anything.
What
Anything in particular, like
a particular dish or food that you
Oh, oh, for me, I like tostones. It's just quick and easy to like make. I see it as like a quick little snack.
so tostones, they're delicious. I love them. I make them all the time. You take a green plantain, yeah, and you cut it into chunks. You fry that, then you smash it, then you fry it again, and you put a little garlic and a little salt on it. It is literally, it's like crack. It's the
It's the
best
best
thing.
thing. Yeah.
So good, so good.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. It's really delicious. Sorry to make you hungry. It's lunchtime. I realize it's lunchtime here. Okay, so like we're all getting a little hungry. It's delicious. You can also do plantains when they're ripe, but then they're sweet and you don't
Yeah.
smash them. So
Mhm.
yeah, tostones, I could eat that every day. Yeah, it's really good. Any other last minute questions for Jordy, who has to head off to work shortly? Because it's what time is it now by you?
It is
Uh,
6:43 in the morning.
Mhm.
like that?
Yes. Yeah, she just looked it up on her phone to see what tostones are.
You guys should try it. You guys should
It's
definitely
so
try it.
good.
They're so good. Some countries call them patacones, but it's the same thing. Sones and patacones is the same thing, just different word for it. Any other questions before we let Jordy go off to labor in the great American capitalist system?
Yeah.
No? So they also both have taken interesting life courses. As Jordy said, right, he studied criminal justice and sociology and a little bit of Spanish, and now he's working in banking. So
Yeah. Completely opposite.
yeah. And then and Anthony, Anthony studied pre-med and hopefully is going to spend a gap year in El Salvador with Sister Peggy, who's, well, how old is she? Like 85, something like that. Who's this great nun that like just decided that she was gonna like move to El Salvador and during the Civil War, right? And stuff. I went there I don't know, 5 years ago or something. And I went with another professor and students, and this professor is also gay. Yeah. And he decided that he would have to de-gay himself to go to El Salvador. Okay. So like he like butched it up, took his earring off, and like tried to butch it up. And I'm like, you know what? I am too old for this shit. Like I'm going as I am, right? Well, it turns out that Sister Peggy had a gay brother who passed away from AIDS, and she's like, I love the gays. So of course she became my friend, and like Josh, my other friend, she was like, well, but like, you know, are you actually gay? So I hope, Anthony, that works. And if I can help you reach out to her again, she's kind of bad with email because again, she's like 85, but
Wow. Yeah.
she's literally the coolest woman I've ever met in my life. She's super. But all right, well, any last words of wisdom, Jordy or Anthony? Thank you, by the way, for getting up so early.
Last words of wisdom. Live your life as you are. That's all I have to say.
I think that's a good bit of advice.
Yeah. Have fun.
See, we're all young. Yes, have fun. Add that to the list.
Thank you for including me in that, but, okay. I want to thank you for Anthony and Jordy.
Of course, anytime. Enjoy Richard and his craziness, everyone.
No, for real.
Oh, you just call me crazy. Oh, well, it's true. I
That's-
can't.
exactly.
You
Exactly.
can't, yeah, you can't cover the sun with one finger. as
How
they
many
say.
weeks you have there?
So this is the second of 5.
Okay. You guys may not discover all his craziness, but you'll discover some of it.
Some of it. There's still time.
Some of it. You have 3 weeks left.
Yeah, a little bit. I don't want to scare them off the first week, like,
Okay. Exactly. So this week you'll open up.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, last week I told them I grew up in a cult, so like, little by little, right?
There we go. See?
All right, it's good to
Complicated.
see you both. Keep me
You
posted.
too. Take
All
care,
right.
everyone.
Ciao.